Welcome to Down to Dunk. I'm your host, Andrew Schlecht. We're part of the Athletic Podcast Network. With me, as always, on Wednesdays is my good friend, Alex Speers. Alex, what's up?
What's up, Andrew?
We actually have some news. The first bit of news that I want to tell you guys about is Down to Dunk Night 2K24. It's on a Friday, which is very exciting. These have usually been during the week, but we're giving you guys a weekend Down to Dunk Night. It is against the Houston Rockets on a Friday, so we got some emotion in there playing the Rockets. We got to beat the Rockets, especially on a Friday night. Be there or be square. The link is on the Down to Dunk Twitter page. You can also find it on mine as well. We will have some kind of live event that we are trying to solidify as of today. I would like to do the Fry Pod live on a Friday. It just seems right. So we're working on that. And then we will do the half-court shot contest. It in the past has been for courtside seats. This time it's going to be for a signed basketball from the Oklahoma City Thunder players. So pretty cool prize if you hit the half-court shot. So be there or be square. It's going to be very fun. Get your tickets quickly because we have limited space. I will drop the link in the chat. I will do that. And I will put it at the bottom of our YouTube page as well. So be sure to check out our YouTube page. I'll put it in. I'll put it there as well. So please get your tickets as soon as possible so that you can get a spot. Come hang out with us. It'll be a great night. It's always a great night. We thank the Thunder for helping put this together, and we are very excited about Down to Dunk Night 2K24. So next bit of news, Al. Kenrich Williams had surgery on his knee and is going to be reevaluated after training camp is over. Something that I don't think that really anybody was expecting necessarily, but you know, with the depth that they have, it's not like too concerning. So like the tweet reads, Kenrich Williams underwent a successful arthroscopic debridement procedure. Maybe you can tell us what that means. In his right knee today at the hospital for special surgery in New York, with the Thunder medical personnel present. He'll be reevaluated after the preseason. Sorry, I think I said training camp. After the preseason is over.
Is this a possible explanation for why he didn't play as much as we thought, or is this a newer issue? Do we know?
I honestly don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I would like for it to be a possible explanation as to why he didn't play, because I really thought he should have played more in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because you look back at Kenrich in the regular season, and the playoffs almost make you forget that he played a ton in the regular season and was actually a pretty big part of what they did. I mean, he played the 9th most minutes on the team. He played over 1,000 minutes last year. You know, he played more than Jay Will last year. I mean, he was a big part of what they did in the regular season. Played 69 games, nice. And he was their small ball guy. You know, I remember they played Minnesota and they just played Chet and Kenrich as their two bigs.
Yeah.
It's Minnesota. So like he was a pretty big part of what they did. So I think obviously you want to have Kenrich as much as you can in the regular season. He did miss the beginning of last season too. Let me see if I can find the exact reason for that. But he did miss some time at the beginning of the season and was fine going forward. But yeah, interesting to see that come across the ticker yesterday. And we hope Kenrich gets well soon.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like he, tore his ACL or his MCL, and it doesn't sound like it's a super long-term concern. So hopefully he'll be back and maybe he'll get some minutes this year. Although it does seem like it's going to be even tougher to get minutes.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, like the minutes were not going to be quite as obvious this season as they were last season. It felt like Kenrich was like and he was an important part. It felt like he was going to be an important part of what they did.
Yeah.
But like now with the addition of Caruso, like he's going to play a lot. You can see even a guy like Aaron Wiggins taking on a bigger role. Obviously, Hartenstein is going to take big minutes there. I don't think like Jay Will is going to completely vanish from the rotation and just not play. So yeah, the minutes were not going to be, he wasn't going to be playing 20 minutes a night or anything, and he wasn't definitely going to be playing every night. So he still provides the value that he was going to provide anyways to this team. And that was going to be, as kind of this veteran on the bench, he's a guy that definitely holds guys accountable. And so he can still do that from the bench. But you'd rather see him in uniform.
For some reason, I thought he was an expiring, but he's not. He has 2 like guaranteed seasons, and then in 26, 27, it's a team option.
And it's for like not much at all.
It's for 7.1 million.
Yeah,
which that'll probably be the minimum.
Right? I know. Yeah, it's a great deal. Like it's just good to have him around. And like also like if they did ever want to make a trade, having an extra $7 million in salary wouldn't be the worst thing in the world either.
Yeah. I kind of wish although I guess they do, some teams do this where they choose a captain. Because I was just listening to Sam Vecini's pod yesterday, and Andrew Claudio was saying that Jalen Brunson had been awarded he was the first captain since Lance Thomas.
Yeah,
which is very funny. But Kenrich seems like the type of guy who could potentially be like named captain.
Totally. Yeah, you hear the stories coming out of training camp, in the previous years, and Kenrich is almost always one of the first guys mentioned as to who's like setting the tone and holding guys accountable, and kind of standing shoulder to shoulder with the coaching staff, with making sure that everybody's doing what they need to do. So he's also a guy that, I mean, he has voiced this, and he voiced this like a couple years ago, that he would like to retire in Oklahoma City when he was like 26 or something. He was saying that. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's just a guy that, he gets to the end of this and they give him an extension before he even gets to the player option or the team option. And like he just stays here, and, would probably take a lower price than the 7.1, and then just kind of moves through and just stays with this team for a decade or whatever, and then retires. So that wouldn't surprise me either. So, we would all welcome that.
Yeah.
Okay. More Thunder news. This is exciting. We haven't had anything like this in a while. There was jerseys leaked yesterday. The city jerseys, which it's really funny and strange that the Thunder City jersey actually removes the name City from the jersey, I guess.
Yep.
Here it is. If you're watching on YouTube, we have what I think is going to be the City jersey for the Thunder. And it feels like an idea that was maybe created like over like a Zoom call or something, where like some person had one idea and then another person had another idea, and they were just like, let's just do them all together. Let's just make everybody happy. And this is kind of what this looks like. I don't know. I think this is a jersey. I think I said this on Twitter, that I think will look better on the players than it does just as a standalone jersey, but I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of it.
It's fine. They're all fine. I remember like 3 years ago, you started seeing a couple people being like, do we really need new jerseys every year? And at that time I was like, oh, shut up. There's so much. It's just fun to have something new to look at. Like, who cares? But now I've gotten to the point where I've kind of come around. I'm like, this is dumb. Just these like, they're all half-assed. Like none. I mean, especially looking at the league as a whole. I mean, there's maybe like 3 that I think are like, oh, that's interesting. Most of them are just like retreads of past ideas.
Yeah.
And none of them like really stand out. It would be cool if they all like kept to one central theme or something. But they're just kind of like these random designs that we're getting every year. They don't really have any connection to the teams that they're describing. Or that connection has just become like so loose and vague that you don't really understand it anymore. So I mean, compared to the rest of the league, yeah, these Oklahoma Cities are fine. They're going to probably keep using that same city court from last year because they're very similar to those jerseys. But yeah, I've been thinking lately about like the Thunder's overall look and logo because we have said a lot of negative things about it.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
one thing I will give them credit for is that to build a brand, you do have to stick with something. And whether I like it or not, I do give them credit for sticking with something this long because it does seem like every other team is just like wanting to rush to whatever like the next design is or to
Yeah.
do a complete makeover. And I think when you're a brand new team, I will acknowledge that it makes some sense to kind of just pick something, stick to it for a decent while for that to be like come fully established in the brains of NBA fans. And eventually they'll do some type of redesign. I mean, pretty much every franchise has, except like the really classic ones. And so I think it'll come.
Chicago's like the only one
Yeah,
at this point that's just held to it. But also it became iconic because they won titles.
Right. And that's the other thing. Like, if this team does win in the next couple of years before a rebrand, like then you're going to keep it because it's going to become associated with winning, and it will all of a sudden look cooler in the same way that like the Spurs logo started to take on a different look when they started winning all those games, all those titles in the 2000s. So, it's fine.
And
It's fine.
and if you like Doritos, it's a extra bonus for all the Dorito heads out there.
All of the Dorito heads.
You know,
It's great. I do like I like the court. I think the court
court.
looks
I do like the court
simple and
as
nice.
well. Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah. I do like the court as well. Yeah. It's fine. I'm not. I don't love much of anything they've done. What I did like, and somebody mentioned this to me on Twitter, is the Native American jerseys that they had for one season. Those were
Yeah.
legitimately cool. I think most jerseys that just say OKC across it, I really like. I don't know how I feel about it just saying Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Because it's a pet peeve of mine when somebody, and it feels like it's always Paul Pierce that just calls them Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what other team would ever do that. Well, actually, I say that Portland did have their city jersey. It was the brown ones, and it just said Oregon.
Yeah.
Probably my least favorite Blazers jersey. So yeah, I guess there are other teams that do that. I don't know why. I mean, I get it. You're trying to make trying to be very inclusive and make the whole state feel like it's their team, especially in a state like Oregon or Oklahoma where there aren't a ton of professional sports teams. This is all we got. So
Yeah, where
you
it's
want
like
to
your
bring
only
in everyone.
team. Yeah, I get it. I get the unity thing. It is also a pet peeve of mine when people call them Oklahoma.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It's just like,
What
come
about
on.
Oak City? What about that?
Oak City is probably worse because no one calls it that. And you're trying to give a nickname to a place that has existed for a long time, that has never had that nickname, and you're trying to give it to it now just because you're talking on TV or on a microphone. It's like, no, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to just call it Oak City. No one calls it that. That'll probably be the the jerseys next year. They're just kind of going to go over all the pet peeves of Thunder fans. It's like, we're going to call it Oklahoma, and then next year it's Oak City. It's like, no.
I'm
Please.
still waiting for. I really think there's something that they could pull from the state flag because I genuinely love Oklahoma state
It's
flag.
a great state flag.
I
Really
love that color of blue.
Mm-hmm.
That color of blue I think is really unique and is like very representative of the Oklahoma sky.
Yeah.
And I love the symbol that shield in the middle of the flag. In
Totally.
fact, Dusty Gilpin, who did our logo, he did like a stylized version of that and made bumper stickers out of it, which I still have on my car.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I feel like there's something there that you could transport to a jersey that could potentially be cool.
Yeah.
So maybe one day they will do that.
And it's extremely unique. Whenever they did the design, like whoever did that, big time props. Mad.
Yeah, nailed it.
That guy.
One done.
They did great. Thunder, however, eventually we could use a rebrand away from the Dorito logo. So unless they win a title, then Doritos for all.
Then we'll never change
forever. Okay, I think that's it. Except, I mean, people have been writing and talking about the Thunder. I feel like people are doubling down on how good they think the Thunder are going to be lately.
I know. I don't like it. I don't. It's if it almost feels like a version of the Wemby conversation where people are trying to like one up each other on how much they believe.
Yeah, definitely. Where the
chill,
expectations for
just relax.
The expectations for Wemby are so out there and crazy. And maybe he gets there, but man, like the expectations are like he is going to be the best player ever or a huge disappointment, to everybody.
Yeah.
And like now the Thunder either are going to be the best team in the Western Conference or a huge disappointment to everybody.
I know, even like someone like Sam Vecini just continually, casually saying, I think they're going to cruise to the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, yeah, that sounds like very possible, but at the same time, it's just.
But at the same time,
it's a level of pressure on this team that they've just never had.
We let us cruise in peace, please. Like you don't have to talk.
But you know what? That's the reality. I mean, that's what happens when you become good. It's why there was so much pressure on those early OKC teams.
Definitely.
After that initial 50-win season, that was their fun season.
Mm-hmm.
They got all their fun out, and then after that, it was championship or bust. And similar to OKC, they had their big season, big breakout season, and now it's basically going to be championship or bust for the foreseeable future.
I know.
So, I guess I just gotta welcome it. There's nothing.
Yeah.
I would rather be in this situation than the situation of like Pistons fans and people still talking negatively about your team like 6 years into the rebuild. Dude,
I cannot imagine what that must feel like to be a Pistons fan, where you're like, we've been doing this for so long, and a lot of times the conversation around teams, and this is something that's happening with Chicago and Utah. It's like, pick a direction. Just pick a direction. Well, the Pistons clearly picked a direction. Yeah. And they picked it in a way that I would have said, yes, good job. You picked a good direction to go. Way to go. And it could not have gone worse in this particular direction. It's actually kind of astounding that they have stayed this bad for this long. It's actually really difficult to stay this bad for this long.
Oh yeah.
It's quite an accomplishment. Do you see this tweet from Todd Whitehead, crumpled jumper, who tweeted the Sports Radar like graphic that said the Thunder roster has more plus players than any other team in the NBA.
Yeah.
It's a synergy impact number, and like their top 10, there's nobody else that has 10 players that are positive in all these categories, with like Wiggins, Kenrich, Isaiah Joe, and Casey Wallace being like the lower end of it. And then obviously Shea's number 1, Chet number 2, Caruso's number 3 in this stat, and then J-Dub number 4 in this one, which I thought this was very interesting, because it really does, when you look at it like that in a graphic, it's like, oh, they don't have like the guys that have like the most glaring deficiencies in that top 10. It's like, okay, maybe Dort's decision making, maybe it's Isaiah Joe's lack of versatility, but it's like both those guys you feel comfortable having them on the court. It's not like you wouldn't want those guys on your team. Those guys would play for almost every they would play for every single team in the NBA. Like I feel confident in saying that.
Yeah.
And so to have that kind of top 10 really does show the depth that they have. It's just,
and that's why people are so comfortable saying outlandish things about the Thunder, because even if you have concerns about, how long is it going to take to, work in these two guys, you might have concerns about the too big lineup. It's like the too big lineup is with two guys who are just crazy positives, who have been crazy positives during their career. And the same with Caruso. Like there really isn't a weak link. So even when you have mild concerns, you go back to the fact that it's hard not to feel like every 5-man unit Mark puts out there is going to be successful.
I know. like all the experimenting that's going to happen this year. Because in the past, it's been like, okay, like we know, and there's still going to be some Usman Jang experimenting that happens this year. I'm trying to think of the guys that would make us feel the most uncomfortable. Like those
I mean,
guys,
the
really,
rookies.
the rookies, yeah, Dylan Jones. Like who knows? Like if Dylan Jones can't shoot it in year one, and they are really trying to get him reps, then like yeah, that could be tough. Us could be tough, but we also all know that once we get to like March, April, May, uh, those guys aren't going to be playing. Like it's just, and if they are, it means that they're really good. Like you think about last year, Davis Bertans was on the team at the beginning of the season. Josh Giddey, who was just kind of a thing all year in multiple ways. Micic, who was kind of in and out, but like we knew couldn't defend. We still had Poku on the roster at the beginning of last year. They've really solidified this roster in a pretty significant way. That you can feel comfortable saying some of these crazy things just because of their quality depth. And like Jay Will, who people probably just won't talk about. Like I know that his numbers weren't good in the playoffs, but I still believe that he's a competent player just because you can see that he thinks the game at a high level. And if he's playing like 10 minutes a night during the regular season, you're like, yeah, that's fine. Like I feel comfortable with him out there.
Yeah, even that feels like tough. Like when the team's fully healthy, how realistic will those 10 minutes be?
I know. Yeah. Yeah. When they're fully healthy and they're wanting to play their best guys. Yeah. I think that the 10 minutes is not going to be easy to come by. You'd have to be really experimenting with Chet at the 4, like that whole night, basically.
Yeah.
To get him there. So, okay. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to discuss the history of 50-win teams. We'll be right back. And we're back after that quick break. Al, you had an idea that you texted me last night. Let's walk the listeners through it and discuss.
Yeah. So I went through Basketball Reference and looked at every team who had a 50-win season, like the first time they had it, their first 50-win season, and then what happened the year after. Because we did all the over-unders except for OKC. OKC's over-under right now is 56.5. Has it always been that high? I guess it has. I thought it was a little lower, and then it got bet up. But
I thought I remember 54 being one, but
yeah, but I checked like multiple sites, and it is 56.5.
Yeah,
very high.
Yeah.
So I thought this exercise would be helpful to kind of decide, whether we want to go over or under. Just looking at teams who have done this before, and then what happened the year after. Were they able to stay at those same heights, or did they have a little bit of a drop off? And so I went back to 2001 season. So roughly 25 years. And there were 50 teams that I went through. First of all, shout out to the Wizards. Shout out to, I feel like there's one other team that has not had a 50-win. Oh, Washington. Oh, wait, that's the same team. Shout out to both of them, Washington and the Wizards. They were great. I actually thought Brooklyn was one, but then I realized that they did have a 50-win season during one of the shortened seasons during COVID. So I did end up having to include them. And also shout out to the Spurs, who I didn't have to include because they won 50 every year going back to like 99. So that was
crazy.
Great. Every other team pretty much had one. And I will say, like, obviously 50 wins is a completely arbitrary number, but I did feel like it was a really good marker for memorable teams, with some exceptions. Like there were, like the fact that those John Wall, Bradley Beal teams never won 50 games. That feels right to me. Like those teams didn't really make an imprint on me in the way some of these other teams. Like for instance, the 2014 Blazers, like the Brandon Roy Blazers. Like I loved those teams. I felt like those teams had something. They really had an identity. And just going through a lot of these teams, like I thought it was so cool how Memphis had 4 different versions. Because I'm always trying to just look at the first time they won 50 wins And so you kind of have to make a decision, like, was this a new enough group to count as like a new version of 50 wins? And with Memphis, it was like so defined, like they had the Pau Gasol era, 2004, then they had the grit and grind, 2012, and then they had the jaw in 2022. And just having each of those eras of Grizzlies basketball having their own 50-win season, I thought was really cool. And you saw that with multiple teams where it just kind of helped define the major points in their franchise's history, at least over the last like 20 years. Like Miami was another one, like 05, that Wade team, the year before they won the championship, 2011, the first LeBron year, and then 2022, the like weird devil magic Heat that we've gotten the last couple of years.
Yep.
So yeah, it was really fun. Cleveland is another great one because it's like 07, that first year they go to the finals, play the Spurs. 15, LeBron comes back that first season with David Blatt. And then 2023, the season with Evan Mobley as a rookie coming in. Or I guess that would have been Evan Mobley's second year. So yeah, it was just cool going through and seeing all these different teams because it really is a helpful way to kind of define some of these franchises. So there were 50, and the things I looked at were, one, how many did they win in their 50-win season? What was their over-under that year?
Yeah.
And what was the difference between that? What happened in that 50-win season? What was the jump from the previous year? So, for the Thunder, they went from 40 wins to 57 wins in one season. And then I looked at their over-under the next season and then what actually ended up happening. So there were, I said 50 teams total. Yes. 28 of those teams beat their over-under. And 22 of those teams missed their over-under the year following their 50-win season. So, I mean, not 50-50, but basically 50-50 with, leaning towards beating your over-under. What was interesting, though, is that of those 28 teams, 15 of them beat their over-under by 7+ games.
Wow.
Like, crushed it. Because these were teams that were coming off a 50-win season. So they had high over-unders going into that next season. And 15 of them beat it by 7+ games.
So they were just on like a crazy trajectory, which you could see this Thunder team. I mean, 56. I don't know. Beating it. To get like 63 wins or whatever would be, or 60. Yeah, I guess 63 wins would be.
But at the same time, like, not impossible.
Yeah. Would anybody be shocked if this team won 63 games? I don't think people would be shocked. By the way, Mr. Westmess, I don't know. I guess this is probably true. I don't know why it wasn't true. He said that he's at Sam Presti's house right now, fertilizing and spraying for weeds. So be sure to do a really good and efficient job spraying those weeds, Mr. Westmess.
You better have a 0-0 mentality.
That's right.
22 who missed their over-under. 13 of them missed it within 2.5 games. So basically, we're still really good.
They're right there.
To be expected. 9 missed it by 6 or more games. And I thought it'd be helpful to go through those 9 teams just to see like what happened in these seasons. So the first one is the 2021 Nets. A lot of these you'll be able to immediately know what happened the next season.
Pure chaos.
Yeah, for the Nets, it was pure chaos. You had the Kyrie vaccine thing, then the Harden trade. They end up winning 44 games, 12.5 under what they were expected to. The 2015 Bulls won 50 games. I treated this as their own thing because Derrick Rose wasn't playing at this point. This was really Jimmy Butler's like team, and this was their big breakout as Jimmy Butler's team. But even though they won 50 games, their over-under was 55.5, and that was the year that Tibbs got fired. Yeah. The following year was Fred Hoiberg's first year of coaching, which was a huge failure. They won 42 games. They missed the playoffs. They missed their over-under by 8.5 games.
Wow.
So I don't think that's a great comparator.
That's Indy. Powell. Was that Powell's first year too?
That might have been.
I think it was because that's when the Thunder were trying to get Powell, and then he decided to go to that team. And like there's some characters on this team. Powell, Jimmy Butler, Noah, Aaron Brooks played almost 2,000 minutes for that team.
I know when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this must have been like the Wade Rondo like that team, but it wasn't.
Yeah,
This was
McDermott
before that.
is like at the end of the bench for them, like still not really catching on. Huh. It's a weird team.
The 04 Pacers won 61 games. Probably can guess what happened the following season. Malice at the Palace.
Yeah.
Then they win 44 games as a result. Missed their
Yeah.
over-under by 7.5. 2001 Milwaukee Bucks. Now, of all the teams I looked at, that because some of these going back to the early 2000s, I remember like those Sixers teams and like the Kings and the Lakers. There are some teams I don't remember, and one of them was the Milwaukee Bucks. So in 2001, they make the Eastern Conference Finals. That's when they lose to the Sixers. They won 52 games that season.
Oh yeah.
They come back the next season with an over-under of 50.5. They start 26-13. They're doing great. They look like the same team. Not really because of injuries. They lose 16 of their final 22. Completely. I was Googling it last night to try to figure out what happened to this team. And it wasn't really injuries. It was just like apparently awful locker room chemistry. They lose 16 of their final 22, including the final game, which if they had won, they would have made the playoffs. They lose 123-89. Just get like completely demolished. And they end up winning 41 games that year, missed their over-under by 9.5.
Wow. That was a good team too. I mean, they had
that was like early Ray Allen,
Sam Cassell, Glenn Robinson, Tim Thomas played a big role for them. Michael Redd was like a young Michael Redd. Was that? No, that wasn't his rookie year. But yeah, I mean that's a good team. They got Rafer Alston. What?
Rafer Alston?
Greg Anthony? Wow.
The next team, this is the only team that actually got better, even though they're in this group of missing their over-under by at least 6 games. The 05 Heat, they won 59 games, had made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. This is, of course, bringing in Shaq.
Yeah.
And then the next year, their over-under is 58.
Oh.
And they only win 52 games. Now, this was the season that Pat Riley took over for Stan Van Gundy after they start 11-10. They go on to win the championship against the Mavs in 06. So obviously didn't hurt them. Yeah. The next one is the Bubble Lakers. Won the championship, won 60 games, came back. LeBron only played 45 games. 80 played 36 games.
Yeah.
They still were a playoff team. They lost in the first round, but they only won 48 games. And then let's see. There were 2 more. 05 Houston was the biggest difference. So in 05, they won 51 games. And then the next season they come back, over-unders 54. They only win 34 games. Whoa. They missed their over-under by 20 games. And it was because McGrady missed half the season from back issues, and Yao Ming missed 25 games. You still feel like even with that, like McGrady still played half the season. Yao Ming still played like 57 games. How did they miss it by 20? But yeah, they missed the playoffs. And then the last one, just 2 years ago, the Dallas Mavericks, 2022. The Luka team, their first 50-win season, 52 wins. They come back the next year, trade for Kyrie, and then they end up tanking by the end of the season and miss their over-under by 10.5. Mm-hmm. So, those are the only examples of teams who won 50 games and then really fell off the next season. And winning 50 games again, winning 50 games the first time as a team, since that's the comparison we're making. So you can go through all of those and like, every single one of them makes sense. Weird stuff happens or a team has injuries. Mm-hmm. So none of them really, Oklahoma City could have injuries. We all know that. But
the Oklahoma Thunder?
I almost just said Oklahoma.
I know.
I was like, I have to say City.
Oklahoma could do it.
Yeah. So I guess I felt better overall that, more teams beat their over-under, and a lot of them beat it by a significant amount. If you just look at just the average, on average, these 50 teams beat their over-under by at least a game. The other thing that stood out to me is just how much respect OKC got based on their over-under. Yeah. So their over-under is 56.5. That is really uncommon. Like, very uncommon for a team after their first 50-win season to get that level of respect. Like, just as an example, the 08 Boston Celtics, the big three, won the championship, won 66 games. They come into the next season and their over-under was 53.5.
Whoa.
Yeah. And they won 62. Like they started 27-2 that season. The only reason they probably didn't repeat was that KG had a season-ending injury in February.
Yeah.
But yeah, 66 wins and their over-under next season was 53.5. Like teams just don't get the respect when it's the first time they're doing it for whatever reason. Like another one, and this one kind of makes more sense, but like the 015 Hawks, we all remember that team. They were the team that the entire starting lineup won Player of the Week.
Yeah.
They won 60 games. They came in the next season. Their over-under was 49.5.
Wow.
The one that I talked about on Twitter last night, which I do think we figured out why, but the 05 Suns won 62 games. They came in the next season. Their over-under was 43.5. And that was because there were concerns about Stoudemire and whether he was going to play. And he ends up only playing 3 games. And they still beat it. They crushed it. They won 54 games.
Boris Diaw season. Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember the microfracture surgery, and like what a huge deal at the time that was, because guys were not recovering well from it, and it was not working. And Stoudemire had it, and it was, I mean, for like one of like the best, most explosive players in the league, it was just like, it's not good.
So you look at the teams that did get respect, and you'll see a theme here. 2015 Cavs won 53 games. Next season, which they did win the championship, 56.5. 2005 Miami, they won 59 games, and then it became 58 games the next season. 2011 Miami, 2011 Miami, 58 wins and then 59 over under the next season. So 2 LeBron teams in there. And then the Bucks in 2019 won 60 games, 57.5 was their over under the following season. And the last one, the 2013 Clippers, who got a lot of respect, 56 wins, came in the next season, over under was 57.5. The point being, just in general, it's rare for these teams the year after they win 50 games for the first time to have a really high over under, which is the case with the Thunder. And I will say, of those teams that had the really high over under, only one ended up beating it, and it was by half a game, the 2015 Cavs. So something to consider there.
Interesting.
So then I was looking for, okay, what teams kind of match the profile of the Thunder the most? So I was looking for teams that had a huge jump from one year to the year when they won 50 games, because as I mentioned, the Thunder, they once had a 17 game jump from 40 to 57. They crushed their over under. So I was looking for teams that crushed their over under. The Thunder's over under last season was 44.5. They beat it by 12.5. And then I was looking for teams that had a high over under the next season. So the 3 teams I came up with, and these probably won't make you feel good, but I'm just telling you, these are the teams that they were most similar to. One was the aforementioned 2014 Portland Trail Blazers, who went from 33 to 54 wins in one season, a 21 game improvement. Yeah.
That is so insane.
Maybe that will happen with the Blazers this year. We'll see. They did beat their over-under the following season. They still won 51 games, so they were still a really good team. They did go out in the first round, however. The 2013 Clippers, who I mentioned earlier, they were probably the closest. They jumped from 40 wins to 56 wins, which is basically the exact same as the Thunder.
Yeah.
16 game jump. They came back the next season, had a super high over-under, 57.5, and they were awesome. They won 57 games, so they just missed their over-under. And that was the season that they ended up going to the second round, losing to the Thunder with that classic Game 5 in Oklahoma City when everything went wrong in the last minute for Chris Paul.
Amazing.
And Rivers. Amazing game.
That's what we did.
One of those games, I remember where I was watching it.
Oh yeah, I was watching with L-Man in the stands, and then we did a pod.
Oh, car pod.
Did the car pod for that particular. It was a great idea to do the car pod, and it was a ridiculously amazing game. to do the car pod afterwards.
The last team that was pretty similar was the 2001 Sacramento Kings, which I can kind of buy this one a little bit more because it was a team with like a very defined personality, very defined style of play.
Yeah.
They really like that. That was the season that they really broke out. They won 55 games. Previous year, they had won 44, so they had an 11-game jump. And they had made it to the second round. Then they come back. They have a 52.5 over-under, and they crush it. They win 61 games. They beat it by 8.5, and they end up making it to the Western Conference Finals, which we all remember what happens there.
Just tragedy for Kings fans.
Just over and over again. So let's hope not for that, although obviously a Western Conference Finals appearance, even though we are championship or bust, that would represent a step forward, progression. That would still be a very successful season in my mind, even though you know it would be crushing in the moment if they didn't make it to the finals.
Well, it's always going to feel crushing in the moment. Even this last year, if you were to judge, what our thoughts were about the Thunder a year ago today and say like, hey, what do you think the Thunder are going to do? You're like, hey, I just hope that they make the playoffs, like get in the top 6, make the playoffs, and then be competitive. And if you were to tell somebody like, hey, I think the Thunder are going to not only make the top 6, they're going to be number 1, and they're going to and they're also going to sweep a first round series, I think you'd be like, you're insane. Like you're an insane person. I don't think they're title or bust yet. I think that the time will come for title or bust. I don't think they're there yet.
Well, I mean, title, I don't know. It's different. Obviously, like true title or bust is like 2016 Thunder.
Yeah.
Where literally I mean, we didn't realize it probably enough at the time, but it really was title or this is not going to be the same for a very long time.
Yeah.
Title or bust for me more just means like, you can do it. Like there's nothing stopping you. You are a contender now. There's no reason why you can't do it unless you have injuries. Like you are one of the 2 or 3 teams that every season could now win the championship.
Yeah.
And so every season that you don't win the championship is a missed opportunity going forward.
I wonder this is maybe something that we do next week is like take a look at this, but do you know who the most experienced player on this team is and how many years they played in the NBA? What their experience is?
Is it not Kenrich?
It's not.
Is it Hartenstein?
No.
Dort?
No, it's Alex Caruso, who has technically played 7 years in the NBA, according to Basketball Reference.
Where's Hartenstein at?
He's at 6.
Okay.
So Shea, Kenrich, Hartenstein, all have 6 years of experience. I just wonder, like, has there been a team in the history or like in the last 20 years, let's say, that has, 7 years or less experience? I don't know. Maybe the answer is yes. Maybe this is more common than I think it is, but it just feels like to have nobody that has more than 7 years of experience in the NBA is just kind of interesting.
I can already tell you because I know what the answer is. The 1977 Portland Trailblazers, who won the championship. They were the team I brought up on Slam and Jam.
Yeah.
And I had a feeling this was the case. They had one guy who had 7 years of experience.
Yeah.
1 with 5, 3 with 4. Everyone else was 2 or less.
Yeah. It's just that team certainly was special, but it's just so hard to even compare a team in the 70s to a team in 2024. It's just even looking back at some of these other teams, like we're talking about that Houston Rockets team that disappointed in 05-06. So they played Rafer Alston 38.6 minutes per game.
Yeah.
38.6 minutes per game. He shot 37% from the field for the season and played almost 40 minutes per game. I mean, like that would never happen on any team that's trying to compete in today's NBA. Like that guy would never ever play. Shouts to Skip to Malou, but that guy would not play like that many minutes and shoot that poorly on a team that was trying to win games. It just would never happen.
Yeah.
And that was in 05, 06. So I
mean,
don't
like 2022 Grizzlies, their only player with more than 7 years of experience was Steven Adams, who had 8 years of experience.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they were like crazy young team.
Mm-hmm.
And they won 56 games.
And they didn't come close to winning the title.
No, but they had so many injuries.
I know. I'm just saying, like, even if they didn't, though, like, would anybody have thought they would win the NBA championship?
No, but
yeah,
that team was good enough to get past the first round. But
yes, yeah.
And they did that season. But like, I think that team could have been a conference finals team.
Sure.
If Ja was
that's not crazy.
100%
I guess that's kind of my point. Is that we, with all of like these expectations that are being put on the team, it's just really, it's hard to like keep in our minds like how young this team actually is. That Chet is going into year 2. That J-Dub is entering year 3. Like, it's just really, really rare that a team, one, has these kind of expectations with 2 of their players that have had 2 or less years of experience. Like, it's extremely rare. Like, what the Thunder have done in putting this team together and what they're doing is highly unusual. And a lot of it is that they're using a strategy that no one has really been able to carry out in like a super successful way so far. And the Thunder are like executing it at such a high level that, this is not normal. Like, nothing about what they're doing is normal. This is not, and it's somewhat hard to even use historical precedent for it because it's so abnormal the way that they have, one, constructed the team, and one, the way that they're like continuing to build it. So like no team has ever been built like this. So it's just going to be interesting to see how, like, over the next like 3 or 4 years, like how many of like these historical precedents do they crush? Because I think that it's possible that they do. Like, that there's not a good historical comp for them.
Yeah, I think the toughest thing for the team is just going to be like managing their expectations internally, which I think will probably be easier this year. But you have to imagine back in the KD years, as they started having seasons where they were contenders every year, where they were expected to be in the championship hunt, and they didn't get it. Like, we all heard it. Like, people start talking about KD. It starts to become a referendum on KD and talking about his legacy and like, is this guy ever going to win a championship? We've seen it happen with Dirk. We saw it happen with,
right. Turns out we were right about Kevin.
We saw it happen with LeBron early in his career. Like, it happens to all of the top guys.
Yeah.
This may be one benefit of SGA, not like, obviously he's a superstar in terms of the way he plays, but it doesn't feel like people do not talk about him in the way they talked about Kevin Durant or a LeBron. So maybe the expectations won't be as high as long as this team continues to progress. But you could imagine, 3 years from now, even if they've done well in the playoffs, but they haven't won a championship, all of that kind of talk is only going to build and build each season. And so, like, how do you manage that? And I actually feel like we've heard different players around the league talk about that. I mean, Giannis has talked about this in terms of like, you can't win every year, and like, you just have to like enjoy the journey and know that like each season is kind of like its own little thing, and you're always building towards something, but you can't let like consecutive seasons of disappointment like build on you in any way. You just have to that's kind of like that 0-0 mentality that they're talking about, where you kind of throw away last season and let's just focus on this season. But I think that's hard to do, and it takes a lot of maturity to recognize that, especially as you start getting further and further in the playoffs. And because every time you get far in the playoffs, there's always a scapegoat. There's always like someone to blame in the playoffs. There's always something that fans focus on or national media focus on. And it's like, can you just ignore that, come back next season, still have the same energy to go do this incredibly long and difficult task again? They're still in the infancy where I still think this is going to be a fun season, even though they have expectations. Because it's really their first season with expectations. But yeah, in the upcoming seasons, like, that's only going to build, and I'm sure we're going to feel it as a fan base. that's starting to build. Because I mean, you could probably go listen to, well, you can't, but you can go listen. You could, if you could listen to pods from like 2012 versus like 2016.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a totally different perspective as a fan when you've been beaten down, when you've had things like the Russ injury with Pat Beverly or the Ibaka injury.
Yeah.
And you're like, can we just get one chance for this to happen? So yeah,
I'm you can listen to on the Down to Dunk feed is December of 2016.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm definitely going to enjoy this season, but I really want them to take advantage of every single season because you just never know. And, you know, we talk about KD leaving a lot and we put a lot of that blame on KD, which is understandable.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if you have a top 5 guy in the league and you don't win anything in his first decade in the NBA, at that point, you kind of got to expect in the modern NBA, he might leave. That's just what happens. Like, yes, there are guys like Dirk who didn't win in his first decade and ended up sticking around. Most superstars who don't win in their first decade, they start looking around.
Yeah. Even if you do win, like think about Giannis.
Yeah,
it wasn't that long ago that Giannis won the championship and he's going through the drive-through at Chick-fil-A, getting the 50-piece nugget. It wasn't that long ago. And yet people are already trying to tear that team apart and trying to be like, hey, Giannis should probably go somewhere else, you know. I mean, it's they've had to do things to their roster that are probably not the way that you'd want to do it.
Well, they've had to go all in and double down in a way that is terrifying for their future. But
and he won it, and he won the whole thing. You know, think about even Denver, who won a title 2 years ago. You know, and people are like, well, I don't know about Denver. Is this even going to work? Is it? People always have been mentioning like Jokic retiring. It's like, wait a minute, what's happening? Like they lost 2 role players, and we're like, well, I think he might retire early now. Like,
no, I'm into that. I'm into that because we have their picks. Keep talking about that. Put that.
I know, but it's just like, what are we even doing? Like, what in the world is happening here? You know, it wasn't that long ago that they did the thing that we are all saying every team should just sell out to do, and they did it. And the moment that it's over, it's like, okay, well, I don't know if they can ever do it again. You know, what a disaster this is in Denver. It's like, are you kidding me? Like,
well, for them, the more interesting thing was it wasn't immediate. The immediate reaction was, this is a dynasty. Look how young they're going to have this core for the next decade.
Everybody has done that to every team, though, that has won it. That is what like the media machine does. It's like, well, feels like they got this decade locked down. You know, they do that after everybody wins it. It's like, well, is Giannis just going to be like the guy moving forward forever? You know, Jokic is going to win it forever. I think the Celtics favorite to repeat. They're going to do it. And it's like, what do we have to do this? Like it's been every year that people do this.
Yeah, I was looking at what teams would not have gotten that treatment. I'm thinking 2019 Toronto.
Yeah, definitely not.
Well, probably 22 Warriors, just because everyone kind of recognized this is at the end.
Yeah. But if you have like a star that's like his late 20s, early 30s, people are just gonna be like, oh yeah, I think they should be able to do this for a long time. You know?
Yeah. Speaking of Denver, one of the teams on here that I thought was funny was 08 Denver. They won 50 games. And then they didn't make it past the first round. They come in the next season. Their over-under is 40.5, in part because they had traded Allen Iverson for Chauncey Billups, who was 32 at the time. I guess that's the reason the over-under dropped that much. Maybe people didn't believe in Chauncey. They thought he was washed or something. But they win 54 games, made it to the Western Conference Finals. I took that to mean that people were much higher on Iverson, like late career Iverson, than I thought. But maybe there was another reason why their over-under dropped that much, but they obviously killed it and made the Western Conference Finals.
That team was a nightmare too. They were really good. Yeah. Like Nene was really good for them. Obviously Melo was awesome. But yeah, Chauncey was great for the Nuggets. That was a great trade for them. J.R. Smith. Man, some of the minutes that you just look back on can just like it's just crazy. Like the NBA has just changed so much. It's just wild to think about how much the NBA has changed from like when we were like in high school or college to today, with just
Yeah.
how teams handle everything is just so different. It's just crazy to me that almost every team is operating in an intelligent way in some way. Like who's the dumbest team in the NBA today?
I mean, this summer you probably would say Pistons.
Yeah, Detroit is still up there, and they have
Um,
new management, but their new management hasn't really shown anything different, which
yeah, I mean,
points to an ownership issue.
Charlotte was that team for a long time, but they now have new management.
Yeah,
Uh,
Wizards, JJ Lynch says, and like even them, like
oh, see, I think the opposite with the Wizards. Like it's kind of the same thing with Charlotte, which is like they had this stupid management that just wanted to make the playoffs for the last decade, and they finally chose a real direction.
yeah,
So I think they're pretty well respected. I mean, they have a plan. They're doing what OKC did,
yeah.
and
Honestly,
everything like
Chicago.
makes sense.
Honestly, Chicago might be the answer.
Yeah, Chicago's probably the worst right now.
You know, and even so, like they've got good players. I just don't know that any team is being run like as incompetently as teams were run back then. You know,
No, that part of it used to be a lot more fun. Having someone like David Kahn, although I would say Troy Weaver, he got pretty close, but David Kahn, they were just used to be GMs that were so bad, and it was very fun to have them around.
yeah, it was Troy. I wonder how much of it with Troy just has to do with the ownership group in Detroit. And I think we'll find that out in the next calendar year about, what happens with this team.
Yeah.
Because I do think that the ownership is a huge part of why things have not gone well for the Pistons and probably will not get any better anytime soon. And they're just, to me, and they've already kind of started to do that with the Tobias Harris trade. I just feel like they're destined to make some dumb trade that gets them to the middle and stuck in the middle.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's like their ultimate destiny, which is really sad because Pistons fans, like there are a lot of them and they are loyal and they have been through it. They have really been through it. And they lost James Edwards as their beat writer. It's just like, man, can they take many more hits as a fan base? I don't know.
They need Cade to be a top, let's just say top 15 player. And until he's that, it honestly isn't going to matter. Nothing's going to matter.
It feels like a reach even at this point for him.
I know it does.
I mean, that would be.
And if that's not the case, then yeah, they're going to be at best mediocre. Like you just need a top guy. Unless you have some like amazing, unique system, and I don't think putting a bunch of guys who can't shoot together counts.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like that the Thunder have now 3 guys on their team that you would say that you would want over Cade.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have been keeping track. People have been sending me rankings. A new one just came out from CBS Sports, and both J-Dub and Chet were above Şengün. Shout out to me. But I haven't been seeing where Cade's been falling in those, so I'll have to take a look at that.
I can't imagine that they would be above either one of them. I got talked to Vicini not that long ago about it, and we did like the draft of players under 24, whatever it was. And J-Dub went before Cade, and I was kind of giving Vicini trouble for taking Cade, and he was like, yeah, he's like, I'd much rather have J-Dub. It's like people that like the draft and young players are like their entire job. And like, yeah, I'd much rather have J-Dub, which is crazy to think about because it wasn't that long ago these guys were drafted and like the reputations were pretty far away from each other as far as what those two could be. But J-Dub has surpassed certainly expectations to a huge degree.
Yeah, CBS had Chet at 30, J-Dub 37, Şengün 47,
nice,
Cade 49.
Wow. I mean, to think about him getting to top 15 and not like that list is like end all be all, but like he is far away.
Yeah.
Like far, far away from becoming that. Even if he became a top 30 player, you would be pretty happy if you were a Detroit Pistons fan. But Anyways, shout out to Pistons fans. sad times. Okay. Just a reminder, I'll post this link in the chat again for those of you that have joined us. Down to Dunk Night, we are going to be watching the Thunder play the Houston Rockets on November 8th. It's really, I mean, it's not that far into the season. It's going to be great. So be sure that you get your tickets. Join us for Down to Dunk Night. Come hang out with us. It's going to be a blast. And Media Day, gosh, it's the 18th. We're 12 days away from Media Day. So we'll have more fun content coming at you guys for Media Day. Very, very excited. Very much looking forward to that day. And then preseason begins and they start playing real games not too far after that. So I'm excited to overreact to some preseason basketball. It's an annual tradition.
I can't believe we're almost there.
I know. It's crazy. Please, if you're watching on the stream on September 18th, please like this video right now. Please do that. Hope you guys are doing great, and we will talk to you guys again on Friday.